Thanks, folks, for joining us. This is week 3 of Posthoc live salons. The experiment continues. Today, we are going to be speaking to Erika Solomon. She's an investigative reporter at the Financial Times, and she wrote an article this weekend in the paper that caught my eye and has been a topic that I've been wanting to talk about, and that is how are drug dealers adapting to the new market as a result of the pandemic. And she's based in Berlin and wrote the article about the drug dealers in Berlin and how they're adapting. Berlin, of course, is known for having a very fun rave and dance culture there where folks go out a lot, and they certainly get a lot of tourists who want to go out there. So I thought we would chat with her and she could tell us what's going on there. Has the rave moved to the living room, Erika?
Yeah, actually underneath my apartment many days. Yeah, I actually live in this neighborhood that's kind of famous for its clubbing scene, and it's called Friedrichshain, and it's right next to, or actually it's the same neighborhood that hosts Berghain, which is kind of like the world famous techno club.
Okay.
Thankfully, I can never hear the parties there, but yeah. So I guess a lot of the people who live in the area are generally the type who go to these clubs a lot. And it's actually what gave me the idea for the story. I started noticing that as the lockdown got more and more strict, that like more and more of my young neighbors were playing music, and I would wake up at 9 a.m. to start my workday, and there'd be like, dish, dish, dish.
Right.
What are people doing? And so, yeah, that was my inspiration, my lovely all-night raving neighbors.
How did you go about doing the initial reporting? Did you ask friends, or how did that?
Friends. I mean, basically, if you live in Berlin, you know people who are here to be in that scene. I mean, there are people who devote their lives to living in the partying scene of Berlin. So it wasn't actually that tricky I was actually surprised though at how so I used to live in Lebanon, and I wrote a lot about the cannabis industry there. And that took like a long time to get sort of people to be willing to talk to me or to find the right people. But I just asked friends who were in the partying scene, and I thought for sure it was going to be extremely difficult, but they were all extremely excited to talk about their business. Okay. And so friendly, actually, that my editor cut some of the things that I had written because he was like, this just doesn't sound like drug dealers. So like one example is that one of the people I spoke to who kind of likes to curate he has like what he calls like a curated customer base of like about 50 people, and it takes like a lot of recommendations and stuff to be one of his customers. And he like
resume to get on his list.
Yeah. And so he'll like, he'll come up with like what you should take for what kind of experience you want throughout the night or whatever.
Okay.
And when I asked him, I was like, so what's the biggest change for you now?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be something business related. And he's like, I can't hug my customers anymore.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, which I was like, kind of thought he was joking. And then he was like, I mean, it's not just because like I like them. It's also because it's like good business to like hug people so no one's suspicious of you when you're walking around. So
is he using gloves now? How is he? So how is someone like this fellow or woman, how are they delivering the drugs to their clientele?
So one thing that I learned is that they always, most of the serious dealers who are like making their own stuff or curating in this kind of sense, they've always used gloves because they don't want to have their fingerprints found. Okay. So they told me that they've been sending notes, like, so there are these different secret Telegram channels or sometimes WhatsApp channels where they keep in touch with their customer base. And this was something that was happening before Corona, but now, and they'll advertise on it. So like they'll put out a list of like, here's our specials for the week or whatever. And then when I started like talking to people and they were like showing me the ads that they were getting during Corona, there was like Corona specials, like Corona chocolate edibles, this kind of stuff. For the people who are afraid of like smoking, they don't want to hurt their lungs or whatever.
Not a good time to be smoking, right?
Yeah. Where was I? So then they also started putting up safety warnings. So they would say like, just so you know, like this is how we pack our drugs. We always use gloves for every single package. So they were like there was also this element of like really wanting to assure people that like the drugs were being safely handled. But I should mention this is like one part of the drug dealing world. This is like the curated part. This is for the people who are like intense, tripping. Like they're doing like a combination of drugs, they're partiers, and they generally have money. There's also an element of drug dealing which you could find anywhere, including in Berlin, which is like out in the parks. It's usually run by gang mafia type crews. And these guys are, there's no kind of like sense of like, oh, we're trying to assure our customers, these are, but even those guys, I went out to some of the parks where, they're known to be hanging around to chat with some of them. And a lot of them had just chosen themselves to wear gloves and masks because they were worried about their own health. So yeah.
And when you I think we wrote about the police were on one side of the park and the drug dealers were still on the other. So, but that's always the situation probably there.
Yeah. The funny thing was that like when I went to this park, it's famous. It's called Görlitzer Park, and it's famous as well for dealing. And you usually see the cops on one part of the park. But the funny thing was like even like the police, like they had all this equipment on, like they're trying to be very careful or whatever. And there was tons of them. I had never seen that many police, and I thought, I'm for sure I'm not going to find any dealers here today. And then I walked just to the other end of the park, and there was like
packed,
like 30, 40 of them. Yeah, it's crazy. Wow. Yeah. So,
wow. So I guess because it's probably a little harder on the street folks, but maybe you spoke to them, the dealers in the park. But for the ones that are with a highly curated list of clientele, are the folks that are staying at home and buying drugs, the curated list folks, are they buying more and stockpiling? And are they buying different drugs than they might otherwise? Would things like cocaine be less popular now, and like pot, which I don't know whether it's legal or not in Berlin, but more popular? So are more drugs being sold? Is there stockpiling, and what are they buying?
So I had expected that people's behaviors would be changing, that people would maybe, I had read a couple other articles in other places. I also spoke to a lot of trafficking experts as well to get kind of a perspective.
Okay, yeah, I want to get to that too, about the supply chain.
But I was very curious as well, like, do people change their habits? But overall, what I was told is that no, but the thing that was really amazing was just the bulk that people were buying in. I mean, I spoke to this one woman who is like another one of these curated dealers just in different types of cannabis. And she told me that, her orders, she was able to raise her prices from 10 euros a gram to 30. And another dealer in like more like party drugs told me that, he'd gotten the biggest order of his life in one like go, which was 1,500 euros. And basically almost all of his orders had almost doubled or tripled in a lot of cases. So, I mean, just people are, like this woman even said, like, people are panicking. They want to make sure that they have like their stockpile for however long they're going to be at home, and apparently party from home. Although actually, interestingly, they're not just partying at home. And unfortunately, there is a big problem with like secret parties. I've never been invited to any of them, but I've been made to understand that they do happen in like abandoned warehouses or even like Airbnbs and stuff. And they'll like set up like this elaborate network of lookouts for cops and stuff. And
how do they do the inviting? Are they doing it like through secret Instagram?
Secret Telegram, that kind of a thing. I mean, I suppose maybe some are using other apps, but the ones I had heard about were on Telegram.
Okay.
And the what you have to pay to get in is much higher than. I mean, Berlin is a relatively affordable city, but people were paying like I heard one of the parties that I had learned about was like 40 euro a person. Some went up to 100, and this is a thing that usually costs you like 10 or 15.
Yeah, those prices are never going to go down after.
Yeah. So
those prices are going to stick there when people can go back out again. Because why would they go back down, right? Maybe I don't know.
And a lot of the clubs are really worried about their survival after this crisis. A lot of young Berliners see clubbing as like a cultural thing in Berlin, not just a fun thing. And the clubbing culture is quite different from other cities.
Well, I mean, it's from the 20s too. It's from like
Yeah.
the Republic. I mean, it has a long history, 100-year history of these sort of underground parties there.
Yeah, and so there is a lot of concern that some of these clubs won't make it after the economic crisis that everyone expects will hit the world after the corona pandemic.
And so, how is the supply chain affected?
Right. So the supplies are, so most of like Morocco, for example, is like the biggest producer of cannabis.
Does that go through Spain?
Yeah, a lot of it will go through Spain. Lebanon, which is about usually considered the third biggest cannabis producer. And I think Afghanistan, obviously a lot of opium and cannabis as well comes from there. So these places like usually drug dealers, or these are usually producers, like they'll have several different outlets for how they get their supply out. Because I mean, this is something, the reason why I thought this was interesting is like, because they're already doing something illegal, right? So it's not
they're really used to adapting super quickly to different market conditions. A couple of years ago, I did a salon in San Francisco. A friend of mine at NPR was doing a series on where the most interesting technology is happening. And like, it probably isn't necessarily happening inside Google or Facebook, but probably with criminals and artists. And that was sort of my thinking in this, is that criminals are always like, they're so quick at adapting.
Yeah, and so one of the experts that I spoke to, who's at Brookings Institute, and she actually said that she thinks that will be the long-term, the biggest impact of Corona on the drug dealing business. I should say the drug trafficking business, because already, especially like the big cartels and stuff in Latin America had been using a lot of drones. I hadn't realized this, but the problem they have with drones is that they can only go so far and they can only carry so much product. And they've also even used submarines. So I didn't know this, but they're called narco subs, and they like take stuff, underwater. And so she anticipated, one of the things is that obviously a lot of people are talking about whether legitimate businesses will also be doing the same thing, because delivery is obviously a fraught thing in a time of a pandemic. And so, she was anticipating that just as legal businesses are going to be accelerating their development of this type of artificial intelligence or automated drones and so on, that drug dealers are going to be doing the same. And so like they're going to suddenly see this as like an opportunity or like just being pressed into this direction. One thing that really will be affected is like a lot of it is obviously done on normal aircraft, like a commercial airline.
Right.
That's most people expect that to be completely cut, and a lot of it is going to have to shift to ships and basically any type of legitimate trade that can still be going on now is where drug dealers are going to turn.
So medical supplies would seem to be something that might be really big right now.
Yeah, so I spoke to a trafficker in Lebanon who deals with hashish, and he was saying that he anticipated that medical supplies would become one. But I heard, I've also heard like cars. I don't know how much cars are going to be sold right now, but that's actually traditionally a very common way to hide drugs, is in like cars. You can just like pack them inside the sides of the doors and so on. I don't know, but I've heard. So anyway, so basically they're just going to be looking for any type of like legitimate outlet for trade that is being allowed to function now is going to probably be targeted by people who are trying to move drugs into, centers of commercial, I guess wide scale use, like in the US or Europe.
Did you look at anything on the dark web at all?
So I didn't even know that drug dealing happened on the dark web, to be quite honest. But one of the dealers I guess you would expect, but one of the dealers that I spoke to told me that actually he thought that's another development that is going to really make adjusting to this pandemic different than it would have been previously. Because now what you can do, I think this is especially with cocaine, what you can do now is you can basically post large packages of cocaine from an unknown address to an unknown address, and this can all be arranged on the dark net. And so this is expected to be another way that dealers or traffickers will manage to adapt.
I wonder if you could mail it and have a drone pick it up at the other end.
Eventually, I'm sure. Right. This one expert I was talking to was saying that at some point, it could be delivered to your windowsill. So
right.
That's the future of drug dealing.
Probably is already being
Somebody probably has, yeah. They also apparently have wars, so people who follow this stuff from the legal side. They say that they've actually seen drone wars between different drug dealers. Like somebody will try and steal the supply or knock out. Yeah. So it's like a full scale thing. Yeah,
that'd be great.
Next time,
get some video footage on that. Yeah.
Ideally.
And did you hear from any of the drug dealers any sort of moral stance in terms of, I mean, this has to do more with the dark web, with websites on the dark web selling masks, face masks for too much money. I wondered if you'd heard of any drug dealers sort of taking a moral stance on that sort of thing at all.
Yeah, no, nobody mentioned any moral qualms with using the darknet. I mean, in other conversations I've had with sources for other articles about the darknet, I was surprised at how many people feel like, oh, the legitimate uses for the drug trafficking, cocaine is a legitimate use, but there's a lot of people who defend the darknet. So I think a lot of the type of people who are using this, who already have a different view on buying and selling drugs, this wouldn't be something that they would have a problem with. So,
okay. One final question. I would imagine, if I don't know how long people are going to be stuck inside in Berlin, but people's incomes have gone down. And I guess the drug dealers wouldn't tell you this, but I wonder if you heard this anecdotally, if the drugs are being cut now with other crops so that the clientele don't really know what they're getting.
Yeah, and this is why so many people who are into this scene want to get to those curated dealers, because the idea is that the trust level is higher. Absolutely. Okay. I mean, the street dealers I spoke to said that it was going to get cut. They weren't even hiding the fact that this was going to happen. One of the guys we were asking who said that he sold cocaine said, the quality is gonna go down drastically. But again, this really depends on the thing with looking into drugs is that it's always extremely anecdotal. It really depends on who you know, what day you're there. All the markets are different, and it just depends. There was actually, right before I published the article, there was a report out of Belgium of a huge increase in drugs coming in through the airport, and I had asked somebody from the Global Institute for researching transnational organized crime about these shipments to Belgium, and they were just saying it's too anecdotal. Everywhere you have these traffickers are trying to figure out where's the loophole, where am I going to be getting stuff in, and so you could have, as in the case with Belgium 2 weeks ago, a huge sudden influx of a lot of probably high quality cocaine, and that could affect the price and the quality there. But in another place, it could be totally different. And so they said it will take us months to really understand how this all plays out. But one funny thing that the dealers told me was that they're going to definitely play with the prices. So even because they know psychologically that people are aware of what's going on, why wouldn't you raise the price? It's
funny because the reports out of the UK, pardon me, I think over the last week or so, maybe 2 weeks ago, was that once people were, stuck at home, that actually the prices of the drugs really dropped. And I mean, now they're probably going up, but and the drug dealers are cutting their prices in half because they were panicked that they were going to be left with too much.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, most people here that I spoke to were
culture there a little bit too. It's still a culture, but not in the way that it is in Berlin, of course.
Yeah, I mean, most people were worried about supply cuts, and so some people told me that they were planning to raise their prices because they were very concerned that their supplies would be affected for a long period of time, and others told me that I have my stockpile, I'm not going to change my prices, my loyalty customer base is more important to me. Again, totally anecdotal, totally depending on their business strategy, basically, and what they think is going to carry them through longer.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us. Have you seen any benefit in your personal life in terms of staying at home more? Anything cheery to tell us? More cooking, more time, a friend, more reading?
I think I've been staying in touch with people more, because I'm American, but I live abroad. And so normally I'm too caught up in whatever it is that I'm doing.
Sure.
So now I've been taking advantage more of all the technology that we have to, just yesterday we had a surprise party for my uncle on Zoom. And, so it's so nice to more in touch. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Erika.
Oh, no, it was a pleasure.
So Erika Solomon, investigative reporter at the Financial Times, talking about drug dealers and how they're adapting to the pandemic market. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.